Pregame.com.
Welcome back, Pregame.tv, the S team, Scott Spreitzer, Steve Fezzik. We took a week off, our bye week, if you will, but we're both having very, very good football seasons. Excited to be here when we are winning. We're going to be breaking down one NFL game, one college football game, and one video on how NFL coaches maybe not scoring 50 on their Wonderlicks. But let's go ahead and go first to college football. We're going to the Big Ten, amazingly, because Scott Spreitzer, we're going to the middle of the country in Nebraska and the East Coast for Rutgers, and it's a Big Ten game. Break it down.
Great. Big Ten, and it's stretching 2,000 miles. What type of team gives Nebraska's defense, since John Papuchis has been defensive coordinator, and since Bo Pelini has been there without his brother Carl Pelini, what type of team and offense has given their defense the roughest time? And you know what it is? It's a quarterback who can create with his feet. It's a quarterback who can run with the football, whether by design or when things start to break down and they have to pull down the ball and run or get sacked. One of the reasons is, and I've talked about this since Pelini's been there, is that Nebraska's secondary defensive backs plays almost a pro football style of defense, and it's really tough for college kids to do it. Their backs are away from the quarterback a lot of the time, or the backs, I should say, are facing the quarterback. Their eyes are away from the quarterback as they follow the receivers around, sometimes in man coverage. And so if you have a quick-footed and a fleet-footed quarterback who can pull the ball down and run with it or call his own running plays for himself, then you've got a defense that is prone to giving up big chunks of yardage against guys that can run the football. And we've made a fortune over the last few years since Carl Pelini left as defensive coordinator, John Papuchis took over, of going against Nebraska when they go up against fleet-footed quarterbacks. UCLA last year with Hundley. They had that terrible first half. I think they were a little bit down from the tragic situation that happened to a player off the field in the week leading up to the Nebraska game. But, man, after halftime, Hundley just said, I'll take it, put it on my shoulders, put it on my legs, and we'll tear them up. And we've seen it year after year. Fortunately for Nebraska, they haven't faced that this year. They actually did. Got to take that back for 1 second. Opening quarter of the game, first game of the season against Florida Atlantic, Steve, the quarterback, you guys might know, there's a Jacquizz Johnson, I think is his name. But anyway, he's a fleet-footed, dual-threat quarterback. When he was on the field, Nebraska takes the ball, opening drive, they go up 7-0. They get the ball, they go right down the field, and he's doing it, man. It's 7-7, late first quarter. He gets injured. They bring in, I don't want to say a stiff at quarterback, but the quarterback they brought in is a guy who drops back and can't run, and so Nebraska goes crazy. Not that they were going to lose that game. It was Florida Atlantic. But the bottom line is you get my point. And so now we got to decide, does Rutgers have a fleet-footed quarterback or a so-called stiff?
I don't know. They almost lost to McNeese State.
Nebraska did.
So they could have lost to Florida Atlantic, given that. But clearly this Nebraska team, I would say if there was one under-the-radar team, like where they're doing the projected Final Fours and the like,
sure.
Amazing to me with some of these losses that are going on, this is a manageable schedule.
Yeah.
Your Nebraska Cornhuskers could run the table. And if they did, they could get into the Final Four. I know this is all pie in the sky,
sure.
and they got to win at Wisconsin and the like, but it's not impossible.
They got to win at Wisconsin. They could slip up against Iowa. I mean, they've been known to do those kind of things under Bo Pelini. But as far as, McNeese State, that's a good example. McNeese State had two quarterbacks. They had a drop-back quarterback who played about half the game. They had the transfer from Kansas State. He was a dual-threat quarterback, a guy who likes to run, and he gave him fits against McNeese State. So, anyway, is Gary Nova, the quarterback for Rutgers, is he a dual-threat quarterback? Not unless you include negative yardage in your dual-threat quarterback. I tell you what, right now, Steve Fezzik and I, we've got 0 yards rushing this collegiate football season. Gary Nova's worse, -5 yards rushing halfway through the season for Rutgers. Now, I know they get that goofy step they keep in college football where sacks are counted against your running game rather than your passing game, but still -5 yards rushing for Gary Nova. So you kind of know where I'm leading here.
Let me ask you about this Rutgers team, because I know they had some fine performances. I think they won in Washington against Washington State.
Yeah.
But here, this looks like the mother of all bad scheduling spots. They're just in the Big Ten. They go to Buckeye Land, get their butts kicked, fly back to Rutgers, the Garden State, and now they got to go all the way to godforsaken, sorry, I know you're from there.
That's okay.
Nebraska.
I left when I was 17.
Good
I know where you're going.
Good people.
As David Humm once said, it's a good place to be from.
Yes. and so if I'm a Rutgers player, I'm thinking to myself, why are we in this conference? Why do I have to fly out here? And I could easily see this game getting away from them if they get down 14 to say, you know what? This is just not the game we're supposed to win.
And that's exactly, I think, I had Rutgers in that game against Washington State to open the season. They win 41-38. And had Rutgers against Penn State. And for most people, it was a push. This guy, Gary Nova, the quarterback, he threw 5 interceptions in the game. And it was right after all the interviews and articles came out about new kind of quarterback coach guru and offensive/assistant coordinator Ralph Regan, the old Maryland head coach, had come in and settled him down, and he throws 5 picks. And
still covered if he got
they pushed or covered, yeah. But as far as this game is concerned, no, I think what happened last week against Ohio State just carries over. I really do. And as far as Nebraska, they played their best half, maybe not only of this season, but one of the top 5 halves of football they have played under Bo Pelini last week in the second half against Northwestern. And it was a game where the defense went crazy and was great in the second half, and the offense was outstanding in the second half. Even the passing game flourished to a certain extent in the second half. So I think building off of that, and the fact that Rutgers has a stiff at quarterback who has a tendency to throw a lot of picks, even though it's been down this year other than the Penn State game, I think it's a tough spot for Rutgers.
I'm with you, man. And also, I've got some people who send me weekly summaries and the like. And if there's one team that they have rated higher than everybody else, Nebraska, on a yards per play compensated for offense, defense, this team, that McNeese State scare has undervalued this team. They're really playing great football. We're on board together here. Let's make it official.
And I was looking at my notes here as you were saying that, because I know Phil Steele had mentioned it, Steve. Rutgers coming into this game minus 9 yards per game on average, finishing 9 yards fewer than their opposition. Nebraska plus 185 yards per game. Now, you could say part of that is playing Florida Atlantic and Fresno State. Obviously had a lot to do with it. But there's a little bit difference to this Nebraska team than the last few, or the first few, Bo Pelini teams. They have a difference maker at running back in Amir Abdullah. They haven't had that for a long, long time. And don't forget about DeMornay Pearson-L. He is a freshman who's going to be on Heisman radars in about 2 years. We saw what he did against Michigan State on special teams. He drove Michigan State so crazy that last week, Northwestern's coaching staff said there's one player they were worried about making a difference. It wasn't Abdullah. It wasn't the quarterback Tommy Armstrong Jr. It was the freshman special teams return guy, DeMornay Pearson-L. And they kicked away from him, almost handcuffed themselves with short kickoffs and awkward punts because they didn't want to put the ball in his hands. We also saw last week in the second half, they're starting to put this guy out on the field more as a wide receiver, giving him a lot more looks during the plays, during the game, rather than just special teams. Tough spot for Rutgers for all of those reasons. I'm back in Nebraska minus the points.
We don't wait on this. We get down ASAP. This only goes higher.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Very good. I like the pick. Let's cash with it.
Sounds good.
And we are going to be moving on over to the National Football League. And Thursday, big game, customer appreciation. I'm going to give out a free play on this. The Chargers against the Broncos. Peyton Manning with the touchdown record. Stay with us. Pregame.tv.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.